We have our own Ryan Garcia with us today. If he sent a bio to Janet, I don't have it, but we can always, let him just talk about himself, which he's already here to do, to share about a wonderful trip that he went on earlier this year. So, Mr. Garcia, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't send a bio over to Janet. Didn't even occur to me. But yeah, so Janet had asked that I share about the trip I went on this past summer. We did Italy for a couple of weeks. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. She wanted photos and all that kind of fun stuff here. So hopefully it's, oh, you know what? Hang on, sorry. There we go. Okay. So yeah, this summer we went ahead and we did a trip around Italy, which was kind of fun. We were able to basically just kind of travel around a little bit, but that wasn't the original intention. Thanks to COVID, we had a little bit of a change. So initially we were supposed to, I don't think it's moving. Initially, our trip was actually supposed to go from Portland over to Croatia, and we were going to spend about a week or so in Croatia and then hop over to Italy. But thanks to COVID, they made some changes that basically said that if we had done that, we would have had to spend 10 days in a hotel room, not allowed to leave for any reason from the hotel room. So kind of within 2 weeks of actually leaving, we figured out we could get there on points, doing it a different way. So instead, we hopped from Portland. We went up to Seattle. We spent 5 hours in the Seattle airport for a nice layover before it got us over to Dallas, which we arrived to a little after midnight and then spent the entire day, pretty much the whole morning the next day, just hanging around the Dallas airport until we were finally able to take off and get over to Italy. Now, the reason we did this was at the time they had a COVID tested flight is what they called it. So it's basically a direct flight from Dallas to Rome. You're tested before you get on the plane. You're tested before you get off the plane. And it turned out 3 days before we went, they lifted that requirement. So we could have done the first trip to begin with, but it definitely still worked out, even with all the last minute changes. So we did land in Rome. We got to Rome at about 8 in the morning. And right as we took the train, metro kind of stuff, and this was the first thing we saw when we popped out. It looks like nothing, but in theory, it is where Julius Caesar was actually stabbed and killed, and it's the ruins of it, which is just kind of fun. Randomly, we did go to Rome 2 years ago in 2019. Some of you might remember my girlfriend at the time and I, we went over basically just to go to Athens, Vienna, and Germany. But then the flight that we had taken over there, the airline went bankrupt. So we had to find a new airline to fly home on. And the only way we could afford to fly home was to take a 10-hour train ride to Rome and fly out of Rome. So we had seen a lot of the sites before, but there were some differences. With COVID, there was a lot of impact, obviously. And then you can kind of see this festival thing going on. So there was essentially the World Cup, but of Europe for soccer. So all the national teams and everything else, they have their teams playing, and Italy was hosting it. So they were playing all throughout the country, which is kind of fun while we were there. One of the first things we did go and see was we did go to this monument. It's actually built in the 1800s, not as old as everything else in Rome, but we did get this really cool aerial view of the city, which I highly recommend to anybody going. It's an elevator that they just take you up to the top. It was more expensive than I wanted it to be, but it was pretty neat to be able to see the view from up there and just kind of see an overview of all the ruins. But the big one that I always love going to is the Colosseum. It's just so different and so impressive. And we spent quite a bit of time there. And I actually like going so much that we did go back at night. So we were only there one day and went there in the day and came back because we had dinner not too far away later that night. One thing that was really different with it, though, this year is there was a much shorter line to get in. You can kind of see a lot of times this is super long, and it was because of COVID, they limited a lot of the sections to go in. And unfortunately, we were there the week that they opened up the opportunity to go actually underneath the Coliseum, to go into the tunnels where the cages were and the gladiators walked through and everything else. And it's the first time it's been open ever. And we missed it because COVID reduced the capacity, unfortunately. So we weren't able to go in and see that. So that was kind of the first COVID big problem that we had, but otherwise not too bad. Then definitely went over to the Trevi Fountain. You can kind of see, this is the video I took really quick, but you can see there's quite a few people there, but it's not packed. So when we had been here before, it was just packed full of people. Spanish Steps were nearby and stuff like that too. We did try to go to the Vatican. It was pretty much completely dead and empty. So we were able to see the outside. We weren't able to go inside just based on the timing of when we got there, but I had gone up to the top of St. Peter's Basilica. And I recommend anyone that goes to Rome at all, I definitely recommend going to the top. They have an elevator. They also have stairs. I did stairs when I was in college. I probably would do the elevator today because it was hard in college. So after that, the one thing we did really different on this trip that was fun though is we really enjoyed night and dinner and all that kind of stuff quite a bit more. So we enjoyed a lot more of the Italian wine, which is incredibly cheap for how good a wine you get. And we enjoyed all kinds of different dinners and really enjoyed different food across the region too. So the next morning we left Rome and we took a train. This was a nice, comfortable, high-speed train. It took us about an hour to get down to Naples. We did have to wear the mask the whole time, but the train had free Wi-Fi and air conditioning, and it was quick and it was actually really pleasant and we enjoyed it quite a bit. And it was the last pleasant train that we got to be on. But with the mask, yeah, so the mask was required because of COVID happening and they were pretty strict on it. They had people that walked through telling you to pull it up. When we did ferries later on, they even told us we had to wear it outside, which was a little strange, but yeah. The first thing we did in Naples, actually, we even took our suitcases and walked a little further than I realized, thanks to Google Maps being zoomed out too far. We walked to this restaurant, Da Michel, where they had really good, actual, authentic Napoleon pizza. And it's actually where Julia Roberts ate, and it's a big focus of the movie in Eat, Pray, Love. So if any of you have seen that movie, she was there, I guess, to film the movie, and it was actually good. I a lot of times think this is a touristy thing, but the pizza was actually some of the best pizza we had, so it was great. Then we really just walked around. Unfortunately, a lot of things were either at capacity before we scheduled kind of the last minute twist to the trip, or they were just closed because of COVID things, but the city was nice to walk around in. It was very hot in Naples, but one thing they did, which I thought was cool, is everyone thinks about Spanish tapas, for you buy your beer and you get your little snack. Well, they do that all over Naples. So if we got hot, we had a really low alcohol content cold beer, and then you had a little bit of snack to nibble on, anything from cheese, pizza looking thing to just breadsticks or something like that. So we were able to enjoy the time. But one thing I did really like in Naples was actually this arch, which is kind of cool. It looks out over the horizon. So it's pretty neat. It turns into a fountain. I guess they were doing a water cleaning thing at the time, but it is a fountain as well. And actually, it was actually put up there by the Rotary Club. So if we ever want to, improve our entrance to Forest Grove, maybe, I just thought it was kind of a fun option for us there, that we have some designs to copy. So after that, we actually took a ferry and we went over to Ischia in the island. Ischia is the name of the island. So the whole island is Ischia, as well as the town, because that's what they do. But then we went to this little town called Forio. So it was a pretty quick ferry ride. It said 2 hours, but it didn't feel that way just because there was a lot of cool views and stuff like that we were actually able to see. But then this was the view pretty much as soon as we got off the boat. So the town is this small town with not a ton of beach, but just this giant mountain volcano pretty much that rises really quickly, and it's really impressive, and you're seeing it right there. And this is where we really kind of started a relaxing vacation vibe for the most part. So we got to enjoy the scenery, we got to enjoy a little bit of beach time and stuff like that. And it was really nice. It was really neat because it's very limited tourists from the US, in all honesty. So a lot of other Italians go there. So the restaurants were all really great. And the nice thing with Italy is pretty much everything is already outside because of the weather that they have in this part. So all the dining, most of the shops, everything was outside. And so it was just like the normal world, which was kind of neat to enjoy that. And I do know this is going to come up because I had made the announcement when I got back. So from our hotel room in Forio, we did watch this sunset. And then this was actually where Allison and I ended up getting engaged after the sunset there. So it was just kind of fun.
Woo-hoo! All right. And I've met her. She's a lovely, lovely lady. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So it was kind of neat. We took this picture actually 2 mornings later, right before we left, basically by balancing two chairs on top of each other with a tripod. And I think it came out pretty great considering how jerry-rigged it was. But yeah, so that was the location right from our balcony of the hotel room, which was nice. So the next day we actually went to this thermal park called Poseidon. It is a giant park that has 20 different thermal pools of different temperatures, everything from hot tubs to cold water, salt water, massage jets, everything, and a bunch of eateries, and then a private beach out in the front. It was really amazing just to go out there and enjoy. The only kind of weird, quirky thing is you can just make it out with this guy here. You had to wear a hat. So you weren't allowed to be in the water without some kind of essentially swim cap on. So that was interesting. Luckily, we both had baseball caps and they let those count, but you were not allowed in the water. And this isn't COVID related. This was just, you have to wear the swim cap like you see from all the old videos from early 1900s and stuff, which was kind of interesting. But otherwise, yeah, it was just beautiful. We were able to eat there. And then this was actually the sunset that night, which was, with the clouds and everything, was even better than the night before, which was kind of neat too. So highly recommend. Literally just a giant place to go in and out of different pools and eat and relax the whole day, which was fun. Then the next morning we had a really long trip actually. So we had the ferry ride back to Naples, which this one was very bumpy. The water was choppy and the ferry wasn't very big. So it was kind of interesting there. Then we got to get off of that ferry and then take a train ride for an additional couple hours on essentially, if the Max was built in like the 70s, that's really the way to think about it. It is one of those little cars that looks a lot like the Max, except they're very old, no air conditioning, completely covered in graffiti on the outside and a little bit on the inside. The no air conditioning made it extremely rough considering how hot it was, and we had to wear a mask, but we made it through. We made it all the way down to Pompeii actually that day. And we got to see Pompeii, which had always been a dream of mine to go to. So it was really pretty. One thing that was neat with that they are doing in Pompeii, this was one of my favorite views with Mount Vesuvius behind it, is they replanted a lot of the vineyards and some of the trees and the crops. So they could tell actually from the way things were, and they tried to replant and make it seem really just like it was, which was cool. Otherwise, a lot of stuff was really well preserved. This is a famous entryway of a house, the House of the Black Dog, and you can see just the detailed tile work they did. A lot of the columns they re-raised and were still intact, and this was actually a grave site, but just incredible how detailed everything is that they've uncovered and unburied. The one thing though is it was massive. We were not expecting just how big it actually was. We walked around for what seemed like forever, and we are very quick walkers. And it just took a very long time, which we weren't really expecting. The next morning, since we had just seen what it destroyed, we went up to the top of Mount Vesuvius. There's basically a bus that takes you from the train, or we got fortunate enough that there were so few people on our bus that the company gave us a taxi ride for the same price. And it took us up to almost the top. Then we had to walk about 3/4 of a mile straight up the hill in order to get to the top of Mount Vesuvius up there. And it was just kind of neat because it is a massive mountain that we always think of as being a big mountain. It's really not that big compared to most of the things that we have out here with Mount Hood and stuff like that, but it looks a lot bigger with everything compared to it. Downside was this was about the only view that we got of the city while we were up there. Turns out big mountains like to collect a lot of clouds on them, and so it was kind of hard to see out. But the cloud that was kind of rolling in onto the mountain, made it look a little smoldering and stuff like that, which was cool. Then we actually went to a city that was basically, as soon as we got dropped back off at the metro station, we did a short walk, like 10 minutes downhill. And we went to this city, it's the Herculaneum. And basically it's a mini Pompeii. So this was actually where a lot of the boats came in, and you can actually see this is where the Gulf of Naples used to come up to thousands of years ago. And so they actually put all their boats in here, kind of like we park our cars in garages today, and or they were storage facilities and stuff like that. Kind of eerie, and I didn't put any photos, but you can actually see they left some of the skeletons in there. So not skeletons, but like the lava formations of people that they unburied, which was really interesting. I think a lot of it was just as well, if not better preserved than Pompeii, just some of the stuff you get to see. But it's a lot smaller. So we were able to knock it out in well under an hour, which made it easier. But they leave a lot. This was a painting that is actually, it's covered just because they put a roof over the ruins, but this is still outside. And then they actually had a full museum. And I thought this was the most interesting thing. These are actually pieces of jewelry that they found at the site. So basically people thousands of years ago were wearing gold bracelets, gold necklaces and everything that look very, very much just like the ones that we wear today. In addition to a lot of the idols and stuff that they always had. But I thought the jewelry was really fascinating because I hadn't really seen ancient jewelry like this before. Then after that, we took the miserable train again. And to say there are other options. You could always go backwards and do ferries to Sorrento. You could always do a private hire car and stuff like that. But this nice miserable train was like $3 each. So that was right in my wheelhouse. So that's really why we picked it. It was definitely hot. I would have paid more for any option of AC. But other than that, it was pretty good. So we did get down to Sorrento, and what was neat was before this, we had been in Naples, and then Ischia is actually over here. So seeing Mount Vesuvius, which is right here, we were finally at a different angle. So this is actually the view from the top of our hotel, not our hotel room. Our hotel room was like below the level of the pool, but the top of the hotel had this view, which was kind of neat. And so you can see Mount Vesuvius out there in the distance, which was really fascinating to see it all. Otherwise, Sorrento was really completely open as business as normal, which was awesome. They're really known for the northernmost city that kind of starts this blue umbrella trend that starts as you go through southern Italy that we really enjoyed. Unfortunately, you have to actually book these ahead of time and pay for them. And we didn't realize that. So we only really went to the pool. But it was still kind of neat just to see the uniformity and everything of the umbrellas that were down there too. But otherwise, it was just a really pretty area to go and explore and walk around. And we also really went into the food heavy with this one. So this is actually a restaurant. Oh, sorry, backtrack. So Sorrento and South is really known for lemons. They'll make anything they can with the lemons. They have little lemon candies, lemon soap, lemon shampoo, lemon in every type of food, all of that kind of stuff. Think of it as when you go to Mexico and there's like the spice in the food. They're adding a lot of the lemon and zest and stuff. So this restaurant we went to for lunch is actually in a full garden. So this is actually a lemon tree with these massive lemons, and you're sitting right underneath them. One fell on our table and flung food a little bit. But other than that, it was really cool just to have that experience there, which was kind of neat. And then for dinner, we did go with some other fun stuff. This was actually a lemon souffle, which we figured we might as well try because we didn't like the other option for dessert. And it was one of the most delicious things I'd ever had. And this they called a deconstructed egg, which I thought was really pompous and didn't really care, but it ended up being a whipped burrata cheese with a pumpkin puree that they put on top, and it was absolutely fantastic. But they called it a deconstructed egg because somebody got fancy, but still super good. And again, enjoying the wine and everything that we got to enjoy there. The next morning, we went ahead and we went from Sorrento to Amalfi by ferry because the cheap train was no longer available, and the bus would have been absolutely miserable with the windy road. And the ferry ended up actually only being about, I think this was a $12 ferry to go all the way around the peninsula, and we had some great views. We got to sit on the front of the ferry and stuff like that too. I did lose track of days at some point, and again, as I was making this, so I kind of dropped the number of days off of the top over here. But we made it over to Amalfi, and this we really started relaxing. Amalfi is really just a little town that's tucked away right on the coast of that southern peninsula. So as you can see, only downside is you don't get any of that sunset or anything like that, but it was still a nice little town that we really kind of set up as our home base for the next few days. Again, they had the blue umbrellas. We did go down once down there to enjoy kind of hanging out by the beach and stuff like that too. And then I think this one's important. So this massive yacht, Allison disagrees how important this is, I'll say that. But it's massive, has its own helicopter. It has a water slide that goes from like the 4th story that they would inflate and put out, a whole nother mini boat and yacht inside of it. We saw this in Amalfi. We saw this a couple other places along the coast. And then when we went to Capri a little bit later, we saw it again. And when we were on our tour guide, it turned out this yacht had been following us on like all the sites we were going to. And it's rented for 7 figures a week. And it was actually Magic Johnson was there on vacation. So we didn't get to see Magic, but it was just kind of neat that he was obviously doing the trip in a different style than I was. But it was kind of neat just to see that I had seen this massive yacht the whole time and then to find out who was in it, which was fun. So we did a quick day trip over to Positano from Amalfi. So basically just a little ferry ride. This is quintessentially one of the top like photographed kind of areas. There wasn't really much to do unless you enjoy shopping, which I don't. So if you like shopping, tons of different opportunities there. Otherwise, it's a lot of beach and stuff. I did really like it though. It was pretty. These are actually photos right from the dock, but we ate lunch and just kind of hung out for a bit before heading back over to our hotel back in Amalfi. Then the next day we went to this little town called Ravello. You can kind of get a sense of how windy this road was, but this idea of it being 17 minutes was a total lie. It ended up being a lot closer to 40, 45 based on how windy it was. And they run buses up and down. And in order for the bus to get around most of the turns, they actually have to stop and back up and do like a 4-point turn just to make a normal turn in the road, which clogs up the not even highway, the little street and stuff like that. But it was kind of cool. Officially, there's a way they're able to walk from Amalfi up there, but we had no desire to do that in the slightest. So bus, taxi, all that kind of stuff was well worth it. This was actually the view, one of the views from the top. So we definitely weren't walking up that because you can't even see the actual shoreline there. But it was absolutely gorgeous. It's really just this old city with a giant garden at the top, and there's lots of they do concerts and things like that up there. We didn't get to see any, but just kind of neat to see the view that was up there. But speaking of those concerts, that was actually available in Pompeii too. So what they've started doing in Italy with a lot of these sites is they're turning them into modern cultural things as well. So they'll have concerts or plays or something like that, really with the ruins surrounding it. And it's really become a way that they can help fund and preserve it and keep it going, which was nice too. These are just some other video or photos from the view up top. And I will say this wasn't the exact one, but an area that looked exactly like this had another rotary wheel and said that their meetings are held there. So again, there's always different rotary locations. It was on a different day, but still, it was absolutely incredible. Just seeing the views, and it was pretty, and enjoy being out there. Then we went over to Capri. So we took this ferry over to Capri. It's a small island, obviously out here in Naples, and it is absolutely tiny. And so what happens was you actually pull up, and you can kind of see some of the ferries, cruise ships, stuff like that down here. And so we pulled up in one of the other ports, but close enough to the area. And there's some taxis, but really if you're going above, say, this level here, there's no roads that actual cars fit on. So you hand your luggage over to somebody that's basically or you pay them to take your luggage up. They're in a little golf cart, and the golf cart kind of zigzags its way up the mountain on these super narrow streets that they can't get cars in, and brings your luggage to wherever you're staying, which was kind of fun too. But just incredible view, really great restaurants and everything else while we were there that we really enjoyed going to, just kind of poking around and trying different things. It was kind of crazy expensive for a lot of the stuff, so we had to avoid a lot of the areas, but it was still really neat to be there and experience it because we had heard so much about it. Then we had actually met up here with Allison's family because her dad and little sister have Italian citizenship. And so they were there kind of celebrating getting that in 2019. And so we met up with them. And so Allison, her little sister, and I, we did this boat trip that was a private tour of just the three of us around the island that broke out to be cheaper than doing the big boat. So essentially it would have been like $75 each to do a big boat that didn't get to go through this little archway or anything like that. And the private boat tour was $110, so it made total sense. And we got to hop out and swim and enjoy all that kind of stuff. But you can see just how crystal clear all the blue waters are, and really see just how steep everything goes up to the top. And this was actually the tour guide that he told us about Magic. That was his boat when we saw the boat. And he also knew all the famous people that owned all the houses. So all kinds of actresses and everything else, they own houses, but they're not in normal places like this. They're on like the backside, and you can only access it via boat. So they pull up in a boat during low tide, and then they're basically just stuck there because there's no other way to get to the house. But for some famous people, it makes sense. There's no other way to get exclusivity and stuff like that. But the island was so small that even with hopping off of the boat and swimming in a couple of the grottos and such, the whole tour took about an hour and 10 minutes. So it's really a small, compact island you can walk across, which is just kind of fun to do all that stuff. And then pretty much the last thing we did was we took a ferry back from Capri to Naples. And because this is such a popular route, the ferry was absolutely massive. We went across the water, didn't even feel like we were in anything. The ride in a car is rougher usually. So it was really nice and smooth and made it pretty easy to go back and forth. Wish that all the other ferries had been anywhere near this size. And so the very last thing we did was we went to this pizza joint in Naples, tiny little spot, and had fantastic pizza. But then we got to watch the finals of the Euro Cup, which Italy happened to be in. And Italy won the Euro Cup on that day, which was fun, except for the fact that the Italians were kind of crazy. And so every goal scored, they launched fireworks and honking and everything else. So even if you're trying to go to sleep, it was absolutely impossible because they were just celebrating really until we had to get in the taxi to go to the airport at 4:30 in the morning. They were still people out running up and down the roads or driving up and down the roads with flags and everything, which was kind of fun too. So yeah, that's kind of just the gist of the trip. And yeah, Jana had asked that I share, and whoop, that's all I got.
Question. So did you plan your own excursion and do Airbnbs, or how, I want to go, so just, send me your itinerary.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we have it as an itinerary. We definitely plan all of our own stuff. Yeah, that's actually largely what we did in the Seattle airport during that 5-hour layover, was plan it, because we hadn't really planned much before that. Basically, we just kind of hit the things that we want to see. And then I like using booking.com for over there, but a lot of the places that we stayed ended up being Airbnbs essentially anyways. Some were better than others. Like some you just key code in and it's pretty easy. Other ones were a little different. We also stayed in a bunch of random hotels. So we had points for hotel rooms that here in the US, I stay in pretty cheap hotels for work, and then they are cheap hotels over there, but they're free. And so we tried very hard to not spend very much money on our housing for the most part, and partly because there was low demand for COVID. But we had a lot of free nights. We had a lot of cheap nights. I think the average for a hotel room was under $30 a night for us. And that's for 2 people. So it definitely saved money there. And we try to find ones that had free breakfast, so you avoid paying for that. And again, the really cheap hot train definitely saved us a lot of money, and all that kind of stuff too.
There's got to be more questions out there.
Ryan, how many times have you been there?
To Europe or
Yeah. Well, to Rome.
to
Every time
Rome?
Girlfriend, you go to Europe.
What's that, Tom? Sorry.
When you get a new girlfriend, you go to Europe, right?
No. So I went to Rome when I studied abroad in college. I studied in Spain, and we went Rome and then up through northern Italy, Switzerland, and Germany. And then when Allison and I got stuck in Europe a couple years back, we did Rome. So that was the second time. This was the third time, but the first time seeing anything south of Rome. So basically everything going south was completely new. We had no idea where we were going, what we were seeing, or anything. So yeah.
So what is your favorite place after all your visits?
I did actually, the island we got engaged on in Forio, we really enjoyed it. There wasn't any historic stuff or anything, but it was just really relaxing, good food, and just, we enjoyed it quite a bit. But I do absolutely love Rome, and I can go back 1,000 times more to see a lot of the same historical sites over and over, because I don't know, I just think it's different, and they're well preserved. Allison and I did Greece a couple years back, and I liked Athens. I'd always wanted to go to Athens, but it turns out the Greeks were in charge a long time ago, even older than the Romans. So their ruins are more ruins. So like the one time we went to Aristotle's house, and it was literally like almost like a chalk line on the grass telling you where the walls used to be. Whereas in Rome, you see the Colosseum, the Vatican that's been standing for so much longer, and everything's just curated. And yeah, absolutely love Rome. I would go back. Plus the food and the wine.
Well,
Thank
it's
you.
very interesting. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a fun trip. And yeah, definitely planning last minute was eventful, but
Yeah.
we got it worked out.